Alright, peoples! Let us officially begin talking about the teams of MPL Malaysia Season 16 after 2 weeks of gameplay. How do they stand among one another? Which teams look good? Which teams look not so good? And which phases of the game they are the strongest in? As well as what I am hoping to see from them moving forward. Because there have definitely been some unexpected surprises, as you say. Especially when you look at my preseason ranking, there has been some there's been some good surprises, there's been more bad surprises. And let's just start with the easiest team to rank on the entire list, right? Let's just start with something simple for myself. Let me crop this a little bit. Okay, there we go. Let's start this simple. Alright, we're going to start with the easiest team to rank on this list. SRGOG is undoubtedly 100% number one overall and in every category of the game. There have been some cases in the past where I would put some teams above SRG's early game because traditionally early game has always been the weakest stage of the game for SRG OG. But after watching them play through week 1 and week 2 of season 16, I can actually say that the team has genuinely been working on that aspect, right? They have actually been locking down, practicing, and showing that they are capable of handling that weakness. And so now, I can quite confidently say that there is not a single team in MPL MY that can beat SRG OG consistently in any phase of the game. They are just too good. They are too strong. They are, in my opinion, the team that has adjusted the best to the meta so far. And they are still experimenting, right? We saw the appearance of Innocent's Bane last week and how much it surprised us when it nearly one-shot everyone on the field. And how Innocent said he's still actually practicing it because he hasn't actually mastered the Bane yet. This team is ridiculous. The only game that they lost during week 1 was to Homeboys. And I agree with you, Judah. It was mostly because of the draft. The Labu Labu gold lane was not it, unfortunately. There is a chance that SRG OG loses games here and there for the rest of the season. Because I feel like they are actually going to continue experimenting throughout the rest of the season. I don't think they're going to stop experimenting because it's clear this team has their eyes set further. They are already looking at M7. I don't even think MPL is a question for them anymore. They are 100% staying in first place until the very end of this tier list. And on one hand, it's good to see a team remain so consistent for so long, but on another hand, it really does create some concerns about how our other teams are doing. Yeah, the whack-ass Bane. Actually, dude, remember when we did our patch note review and I said that Magic Bane might be viable again? You know, we might actually start seeing some Magic Bane. I didn't think it would be that ridiculous. That was just on another level of ridiculousness entirely. The one-shot damage was ridiculous. It's too much. I feel like there's a chance going forward that Moonton might consider adjusting the value, cause like giving it 100% extra multiplier on the skill 2 may have been a bit too much. But regardless, SRG OG number 1 in every phase of the game for sure. And now we will move down the list from the beginning. So let's start by talking about Aero Esports. They're only the second team on the list, so definitely in every aspect they're going to be weaker than SRG OG. This is a team that I personally predicted very highly in the preseason ranking. We can actually see in my my TikTok right here once again. Aero Esports, second place. That's where I put them. I put them in second place, right behind SRG OG, because I felt like this is a team with a lot of potential. They brought in Smooth, they still have Hazel, they've got the promising Ziki. Everything looks like it should be good. I think Kim still plays his comfort picks very well. The unfortunate thing for Aero Esports is I feel like they are struggling a little bit with their identity. Because in the previous season, when Hazel entered, he completely revitalized the Aero Esports roster. He changed up the entire concept because he had very high mechanics, his assassins were very strong, it was a good meta for assassins in general, and the rest of Aero were ready to follow up on that. Going into this season, I imagine that they've done a little bit more practice, and it's possible that they've been trying to expand on that repertoire a little bit, you know? Try to make it so that Aero isn't always dependent on making like super cool plays, you know, dependent on Hazel popping off on Hayabusa or Kim getting heroes like Lo Yi to open up the map. And they, especially with an overall reduction in priority for heroes like Badang as well. I feel like Aero Esports are in a very awkward place in the meta. They are second in my ranking right now. You are not wrong, Darren. You're not wrong. But Aero is in a really awkward place. Because previously, I would have considered them to be potentially stronger early game than SRG OG, right? They were actually very active. They were super aggressive. And I feel like they've been trying to tone back on that a little bit, but it results in a situation where we have a team with players who want to play specific heroes and are very good at playing specific heroes in a specific way, but the meta demands more flexibility than ever before. And it doesn't really feel like Aero Esports has properly prepared their flexibility and hero pool to actually be able to handle that. I think this is overall more of a mid-game team, more of a mid to late game team. Their early game is no longer as aggressive as it used to be. It doesn't feel like Zkif is able to create plays quite as often as before. They are still one of the teams that leans a little bit more into aggression because they do like to fight. But they're very dependent on team fight, and they're very dependent on actually having the correct heroes to team fight with. Not to mention, I do feel like their late game has not really been working out. Kusei is the farming type goal laner. So compared to all of the other players, he's actually a little bit less aggressive. I think Smooth does an okay job. But there is undoubtedly a little bit of disconnect between the players, the heroes they're playing, and the win conditions they're trying to achieve. They're not really able to close out games. Because even in the past, typically, their games closed out from a snowball position. And it's actually, while it is more viable to do that now, it's also at the same time more difficult to do so because there are options otherwise. So, yeah, I do think that Aero has fallen off of being particularly strong early. They lean a bit more into just straight up mid-game because they're very dependent on fighting. I feel like their macro is a little lacking overall, so their late game is also not very reliable. So that's the tough thing. That's the unfortunate thing for Aero. If we look at their scoreboard, they lost to Vamos, they lost to Untitled. It's not ideal, for sure. Actually, Aero hasn't won a match. Damn. That is rough. Yeah, now that I think about it, Aero has not actually won a match yet. And it looked like they were going to. I remember in their match versus Vamos, they were dominating in game 1. And then they just couldn't handle it anymore. Which, yeah, I think, like, fits into my narrative that Aero is more of a mid-game team. Right? They need to snowball and win games fast. Otherwise, they have a lot of difficulty dealing with wave management later in the game. So, yeah. They will obviously be in second place right now, but once we add more teams onto the list, we're going to continue adjusting them. And the next team to go onto the list is going to be CG. And so, just some closing thoughts for Aero. They need to figure out what the identity is. They need to more accurately lock in the drafts they want to play based on the power spikes that their players are known for. But that's a risky thing as well. because if you play only one specific style, it becomes very easy to counter you. So if they want to experiment, they're gonna need to figure that out quick. Alright, CG Esports, my opinion, one of the best teams in the league right now. In fact, I think right now I can quite confidently say CG is probably second for me. I think CG is my top 2 team, right behind SRG right now. I would undoubtedly put them ahead of Aero in overall. I think their early game is solid. You know what? Nah, yeah, I'm gonna say it. I think CG is overall better. I think CG is just overall better than Aero. I know it looks very boring right now because all the teams are just in a straight line. But do not worry. Once more teams come in, we will start to see a bit more variation. But personally, I think CG is just better than Aero in every aspect. Late game, 100%. CG is actually a late game team. It's been a while since we've had a team that's a bit more focused to that aspect of the game. But I think that CG is one of the best scaling teams in the entire league. They are very good at understanding that, like, okay, our heroes like to play for late game. We like to play heroes that scale with items. So we will play it slow. We will play it safe. In my opinion, they are second best in macro overall to SRG OG. I think CG straight up has one of the best macros in the entire league. Just straight up. They are 100% the second best late game team right behind SRG OG. I think that their early game is a little bit weaker, but it's a little more consistent than Aero overall. And then their mid game is the only point where I might consider doing this. But I do personally feel like CG are so good at cutting losses that I want to put them in front of them anyway, right? Because CG has been doing a really fucking good job. Yeah, like Judah said, CG is very strong, having good momentum. When CG came into the league, and I saw that their roster had Chiku and Valens, you know, and then we had Gary, Yeatri, I was like, okay, this team is going to do very well, right? That's why I put them in 4th place in my preseason ranking, right? But even then, I think they've actually surpassed those expectations. Chiku and Valens have really strong experience, and you can tell that their shot calling is really good as well. This team is really good shot calling. I am going to be glazing CG a lot, because the way they play the game is so good, right? The way that they approach MLVB is really smart. They know when their power spikes are. They know when is a good time for them to fight. They know when it's a good time for them to cut their losses and sacrifice things, including teammates if necessary. And they're able to hold late game really well. Not to mention their macro. Again, really good. I love the way this team is playing right now. The players are solid. Their hero pool is huge. We knew their hero pool was probably going to be huge, because, well, Chiku is the multi-role man himself. Valens has played multiple roles as well. And Gary has experience between the swapping of assassin and tank jungle. So I already knew, like, okay, hero pool is going to be very solid from this team. But the way they draft, the way they play the game is really good. I actually really like watching CG play. I do feel like they have a tendency to make games a little longer than necessary, but they just want to make for sure. And I can't really argue with results, right? You can't really argue with a team that wins games. And as long as you don't play as boringly as SMG used to play, that's good for me. So yeah, CG I think is very likely going to stay in 2nd place right behind SRG, because right now I genuinely don't think I can think of any teams that have done more consistently than them in the season so far. Like, if we look at their score, they have 3 wins, all 2-0s. Versus GamesMy was, like, when they won against GamesMy Kelantan at first, obviously everyone was wondering, okay, there was a clean win, but it's against GMXK, right? It's basically MAL all over again. But then they did it to MV and Untitled as well, in very clean fashion too. So I don't think anyone can argue that CG is probably the 2nd place team in the league right now, just in terms of, like, logical power ranking. In the same way, In the same way, I think we all have to agree Games My Kelantan is probably the weakest team in the league right now. I just feel like they're really lacking a lot of things. There's a lot of things lacking. I don't know what their identity is. Games My Kelantan have not played consistently enough in any manner for me to even know whether or not they're better like early, mid, or late game. Right? They've played so far against Vamos, which they lost. They took one game against Ray. That was the only game they were able to take. And then they lost to CG. Mind you, in my opinion, the reason why GMXK won that second game, while it was pretty solid from them, was more from mistakes from Ray. I do feel like Ray made more mistakes than GMXK made like really solid plays in their one victory. And because of that, I feel like I just have to put them in last place entirely. I don't really think there's any aspect of the game where they are better than any other team. I don't even like Martins is okay. Maima is okay. I think Jaja's definitely the standout. It definitely feels like Jaja's the only one that's like actually consistently performing a lot of time, which obviously isn't gonna be enough. MQT is okay. But in general, this team is really, really lacking. And they're better than OV. I'll say that definitely they're better than Ocean Black from last season. But the level of gameplay in general has gone up. So GMXK needs to lock in real hard. They gotta figure it out. I feel like when the transfer window comes about, this is probably the team that will require looking at transfers the most. Because unless the players can suddenly improve by a lot, it's really hard to say how far they'll actually be able to go. So yeah, unfortunately, we're 4 teams in and all of the teams are still straight lines. Which is a little boring, but it's going to start getting a little bit more interesting now. Liquid ID cosplaying OV last season. How is Liquid ID? I've heard that they've been losing a lot. But yes. Alright, so next up we have the Homeboys. Now, I put Homeboys in 7th place in my preseason ranking. And there were definitely a good number of Homeboys fans in the comments that were like telling me, underestimating Homeboys again. It's like, oh, Homeboys, how could you put Homeboys so low? And well, I think I was right. And I am not proud of this. I'm not very happy about this, I will say, because I always feel like it's always a really sad thing to see teams do so well one season and just completely drop off the map the next season, right? You never want to see that sort of thing. That's just not a healthy look for any tournament, for any ecosystem. But unfortunately, Homeboys has just not been doing good, right? Izanami is okay, but I feel like he could afford to be a little bit more aggressive. Amal is actually doing alright, if you ask me. If you ask me, Amal is actually still like performing fairly well. I think Reza has actually been a pretty good surprise. I think he's actually fit in pretty well overall. He just needs a little bit more experience. Kaden is okay. He's genuinely not bad. It's just maybe not quite good enough. And then we haven't actually seen Zippy play yet. It's mostly been Mel so far. And Mel has been kind of inconsistent. Our ordinary marksman has unfortunately been kind of inconsistent. And Homeboys in general has been pretty inconsistent. If we look at their results, they took one game against SRG in the first week. And we already were thinking, okay, maybe Homeboys might be able to do good. But then they lost to Vamos as well. They did win against Ray, which is good. We definitely saw some more solid stuff from Homeboys. Zippy played the second game? Oh yeah, he did. He did play a game. I just don't remember because I think they lost. I think it probably was a game I wasn't casting. Hold on. I'm gonna real quick refer to my own recap to remember what happened exactly, because I do not remember. Which day did did I cast Homeboys' game in week 2? Oh yeah, I did. Oh yeah, this was a good game. This was actually a really good game, this one. Homeboys dumpstered game 1 because Team Ray went chip Faramis. That was just, we don't think about that game. That was not a good game. But second game was really good. These teams have potential. These teams do have potential. It's just they're not consistent. That's always the thing. Unfortunately, I feel like Homeboys is still trying to find their identity. And I'm gonna be honest, let's see. Like, which phase of the game do I think that they are best at? Previously, Homeboys were a very early mid-game team. You know, in Season 15, Homeboys was like the early mid-game team with Ivan and Vel. That has changed, for sure. They are a mid-game team. Homeboys is also a mid-game team. Their early game isn't particularly aggressive. I think Hayden tries, but you can see that he doesn't quite have the experience other roamers have. And then in the late game, I feel like MelQT has not been very reliable. I really don't feel like he's been very reliable. So that's... Aziza wants me to do Ray last. Ray is not going to be last. They're going to be in a couple teams. But yeah, so Homeboys is definitely a mid-game team. I'd say overall in terms of team fighting, they're obviously better than GMX. I could compare them to Arrow. Are they better at team fighting than Arrow? Would I consider Homeboys better at team fighting than Arrow? Fudge is really draft dependent actually. I think it actually just depends on what draft they get when it comes to team fighting. I would say that these two teams are kind of comparable when it comes to this stage of the game. I would say that Homeboys is this is a hard one. This is a bit difficult. Homeboys and Arrow are actually both kind of similar. I'd say late game, Arrow is a little more stable from what I can see. But I haven't really gotten the chance to see much. These two teams are so messy, man. I do feel like Homeboys' team fight might be a little more stable than Arrow. I think I could put Homeboys in front of Arrow for mid-game. And then I think that Arrow might actually be a little better come late game. And then early game, if we're comparing Zkeef and Kaden, Zkeef definitely has more experience and he's probably a little... Yeah, I'll put Homeboys like here. Which means that they're here. Would I put them here? Would I consider Homeboys weaker than Arrow? I don't know if I would, actually. I feel like after watching their game with Team Ray, Homeboys does look to be a little stronger. Week 2 is always rough because it doesn't feel like I have enough sample size to to think about. When Arrow played against Vamos, it was very like whoever got the snowball would win. Hold on, let me refer back to my recap again. Arrow versus Vamos was, Arrow versus Vamos was the last match of the season. Arrow snowballed game 1 in 11 minutes. Vamos snowballed game 2 in 15 minutes. And then game 3, it was actually kind of close. Game 3 was a little closer. Caden lacks experience and he lacks confidence compared to Dusk from Team Ray. I agree. Judah would prefer if I did it next week, but I always do 3 power rankings every season, Judah. This is normal for us. We do team power rankings every 2 weeks. Week 2, week 4, week 6. I am not changing that specifically for this because then it would mess up the timing of all my other rankings. We're doing this now. I do think that Arrow is probably a little better early than Homeboys. And then Homeboys' mid game is a little better than Arrow. And then late game it becomes a complete mess. Late game just becomes an absolute mess. You know what? I'll give it to Homeboys. I do feel like Homeboys is a little better than Arrow on paper right now. So I will do this. I think that's a little more fair. And then it's going to become very difficult to adjust once Team Ray comes into the question. A lot of teams fell off because of the patch. That would make the tier list more interesting, you know, because so many teams have shifted position in general. Okay, next up, we got Monster Vicious. Bit of a weird one, Monster Vicious. Week 1 looked really good, and then they lost in spectacular fashion to CG. Once again, if we refer to my recap, where was the MV versus CG game here? Yeah, in game 1, CG just straight up played better overall. And then in game 2, MV was controlling most of it, and then they messed up. I think in a similar sense, MV is also a very strong mid-game team. I think that out of the 3, they have the most solid mid-game. In fact, I might consider their mid-game a little stronger than CG. I think that this is like team fight, mid-game team fighting has always been MV's forte. Like that has not changed even until now. And I still recall how well they performed in week 1. I think it's quite fair to put them above CG in mid-game because CG doesn't actually often team fight. They're not very consistent. When they do team fight, they peak really good. But otherwise, MV is a team that likes team fighting. They like mid-game 5v5s. That is basically their entire style. And Leone and Bondles both do a very good job of like positioning themselves together with CG. I will say that in other aspects though, they're definitely worse. In fact, I would put them this far back in late game. CG edges MV on only experience? I mean, yes, but MV is a team that has a lot of experience too. Like, it's not like they have like a lot of rookies or anything. MV has a lot of like experienced players. But man, they are so big. Dude, okay, I'm gonna say this right now. MV's macro is terrible. MV has terrible fudging macro, man. This team can only win through team fighting. Their macro is so bad. You know what? Yeah, all the way back here. MV just fudging throws the game when you get to the late game. Like they could be winning for most of the game, and then they just don't fudging control the map. This team is so like so dumb to watch sometimes. Like I don't even know where to position them overall because they're so fudging varied. They're so strong mid game, but then they're like just so lacking once we get to the late game entirely. I think I would still probably put them above Homeboys and Arrow, but just barely, and mostly because of their team fighting. It's just that these two are in a bit of a mess right now. They're really just not like in a very good state. MV, even though they did throw their game, put up a very solid fight initially against CG. They just need to lock in. They just need to stop throwing the fudging game. Learn how to fudging slow push. God damn. Like, Momo should know how to slow push. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's just MV style, because like Momo needs to join team fights like all the time, so he's not really able to split push. And then Ruff is still like very inconsistent. It's like, yeah. Ruff is still having a rough time to this day. To this day, Ruff is still pretty rough, I will have to say, unfortunately. Alright, next up we've got Aziza's favorite, Team Ray. Hey, I beat you to it, Darren. I made the joke first. You know I'm not gonna pass up on that. Every time it happens on stream, I use it. Even though it's been overused to shit at this point. Alright, Team Ray is an interesting specimen, because very similarly to MV, this is a team that always like starts off the season strong and then starts falling off a little bit. The only difference is that this season, they genuinely looked like they had a lot more promise. If we once again look at my preseason ranking, I put Team Ray in a fairly okay position, right? I put them in 6th place, right behind Vamos and above Homeboys. And relatively, I think that position is not too far off. They won 2-0 against Toda quite handily. They lost 2-0 to Homeboys. Mostly due to errors, and then they won 2-1. The fact they even lost one game in the Games MY is quite something. Once again, we look at my recap. Where was the Team Ray versus Homeboys match? Was it? Ah, here it is. Yeah, so this was like a really strong, and again, I do feel like Dusk has been doing a really good job. As a rookie, Dusk has been doing great. Let's look at their roster. If we look at their roster, right? Jome is excellent. Jome is still very good. He just needs space. He needs like his team to actually be able to create space for him, and then he will actually clutch out games. ZQT is okay. I wish that he stood out a little bit more, but he does his job. I just wish that he had like better moments. Dusk definitely has had moments. His micro mechanics are good. His confidence is stable. He's really objective-minded. Reminds me a little bit of Chibi when he debuted. In fact, when, if you ask me, Nova's okay, but I feel like he's kind of limited. I feel like Nova has been the face of Monster Vicious for a long time because he plays exactly the way that Monster Vicious always wants to play, which is Nova is only good mid-game. Which is so sad to say, because I always liked watching Nova play. I always thought that he was one of the more flashy, more interesting roamers that we had. But over the seasons, it feels like this man is like stabilized a bit too much. He's not very aggressive early, and his late game is really dependent on him having clutch teamfight heroes. Which means that the only point of the game where Nova is like super good is mid. Like mid-game. The same as Monster Vicious. I don't know what kind of effect MV has had on this man, but that happens a lot. And then we have Dur, which is good. Like, he's got strong mechanics, but this guy also needs to stop throwing. Because this guy overextends too much. You guys told me about this when I did the preseason ranking, when I was looking at all the rosters for the first time and I was talking about Dur. I thought like, hey, this might be a good addition, you know, he's a pretty solid import. And you guys told me how back even in MPL PH, he had a tendency to overextend and get punished for it. He's still doing it! He's still doing it now! So Team Ray unfortunately also has the issue of throwing. Team Ray definitely also has the issue of throwing games through mistakes. They are definitely a little better late game when you compare to like MV because of Jome. And then their mid game is actually fairly solid as well. Their team fighting is not bad. I think that their early game is very lacking. And like Team Ray has a tendency to not really do much early. Which means that I might actually put them like pretty low early overall. I might actually put them right here. This is probably where I'd put them early. In fact, I could even consider putting them here. Mid-game, they start coming online a little bit more, but I think that they're still probably a little behind Homeboys. And then late game is where they become a lot more stable overall. But still are prone to potential mistakes. I feel like they need to work on their macro as well. This is also a team that's lacking in terms of macro because Dur likes to fight. And if Dur is fighting, it means that only Jom can split push. And he does a great job of that. But otherwise, yeah, I would put T-Ray either here or here in the late game. Here or here. They did end up losing their series, the Homeboys, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, they did. They did end up losing their series, the Homeboys, though it was close. And if it panned out differently, it could have definitely gone differently. I think Homeboys probably has a slightly better late game as well. Jom is definitely more consistent as a player overall compared to like MelQT and Zippy. But Jom alone does not make the whole team, unfortunately. So I'll put them like here. I think that's a fair place to put them. Alright, next up we have Todak. Good old Todak Langar. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Todak. I feel really bad for Lalil. Lalil has the mechanics. You can tell that after all this time, Lalil actually does have the mechanics. Right? He's a pretty solid goal laner. It's just that he's not getting any space. Right? I feel like I have been a fan of Zyme Senpoi for a long time. But for a long time as well, it really feels like he's not been the same Zyme Senpoi I fell in love with back then. Around like season 8, 9-ish. I'm not sensing the typical sort of aggression. He plays like a very, very safe style, which is fine. It's kind of similar to Izanami, but sometimes it doesn't feel like his presence is really noticed. Zayed also is a bit lacking to me. He was really solid as an assassin jungle 2 seasons ago. And it feels like he's just kind of lost that. He was straight up losing objectives against Dusk. Which, props to Dusk, but also question mark on Zayed. Dreams is also very hit or miss. He did win a game for Todak with his Franco before. But it still was very close. Yeah, Todak faced off against Untitled recently and they did actually win. Which surprised me. They're very inconsistent. Yes, you're correct, Judah. That is the thing. They played during day 1. Yeah, so... yeah, so Untitled started out strong. They basically destroyed Todak in game 1. Right? And then in game 2, they got caught out by Dreams' Franco. So there were a lot of mistakes made there that allowed Todak to eventually take the game back. And then in game 3, Untitled just played bad. So the thing is, it's kind of difficult to rate Todak because their only victory is against a team that was making mistakes. I will say I just generally don't sense a lot of presence from Todak. I think that their strongest point is late game because they just wait for Lalil to come online. Their team fighting is not particularly strong. Their early game also doesn't feel very directed. Late game is the only time when it actually feels like they're alright. Yeah, I'd put them like here, late game. And mind you, this is their best point. This is the best point of the game if you ask me. And it's here. It's like in the second half. Their early game, I just don't really feel it. I don't really feel much of Todak's early game. I'll put it like here. Their mid game is also like here. Like this team does not feel like it's all there. Which makes me question Untitled. It's like, how did Untitled lose? lose? How am I going to rate Untitled? Ah! But Todak to me does not feel strong right now. I'll put him like near the bottom. I do think that Todak is near the bottom right now. Comparable to Arrow. And speaking of Untitled, I have to rate them next. Untitled was so easy to rate last season. They had such a clear identity. They knew how they wanted to play the game. Okay, so here's my personal issue with Untitled. I do think that they are overthinking. I think the biggest issue with Untitled right now is that they're just straight up overthinking shit. Like, they're trying too hard to explore the new patch when you don't actually need to go that hard into it in the first place. They're still one of the better mid-game teams. I still think that Untitled plays a mean mid-game, and they have the mechanics, but a lot of the time the draft is not necessarily the best. It's very... the problem with Untitled is that they're very inconsistent. When they're good, they're good. When they're bad, they're bad. And it's been a long time since we've had a team perform like this. Like, when they 2-0'd Arrow, they were just solid. It was the same old Untitled as always. They were playing like the typical style. That was before the patch dropped. Then the patch dropped, and they lost to Todak. They lost to CG as well, but that one makes a little bit more sense. Like, hold on, let me revisit. How did they lose to CG? When was the CG versus Untitled game? Here. Yeah, so, like, Untitled was controlling most of the early to mid game, and Siska was doing, like, some insane things with Lapu Lapu as well. But then CG just held out until the late game and won. And then in game 2, they picked Angela Hellkurt. What are they doing? And then Keemin keeps throwing. What is Keemin doing too? I thought that he had finally improved after playoffs last season, and now he's making big blunders again. Untitled good early and mid, but lose late game. I agree with you, Judah. I do think that is the issue that they're dealing with right now. They have one of the more aggressive early and mid games, I will say. I think that, like, early game, they're probably, like, they're one of the higher teams early game, actually, if you ask me. In fact, I might actually say they are one of the most aggressive early game teams. And then they slowly become less consistent over the course of the game, which makes this very confusing. Thing is, they're still really good at scrappy team fighting. They're supposed to be. I want to put them above Homeboys in mid game because they should be. I think they are. But then late game is very, very inconsistent. Like back here, I'd say. Yeah, I'll put them back here. Which means where the heck do I put them in the overall ranking? Where the fudge do I put them in the overall? They lost to Todak, which I put down here. Bottom 3? But look at where I have them listed. I can't put them bottom 3 if I have them listed like this. They're technically stronger than MV in 2 categories. I'll put them here. I'll throw them a bone and put them here. Because I think they're still a little more consistent than Arrow. I'll put them here, bottom 4. Which is such a sad thing to hear. Normally, if a team is stronger than another team in 2 categories, that's how I would rank them in the overall. If we look at it from that perspective, they're technically stronger than Homeboys and MV in 2 categories. If we go by my usual positioning, they would be up here. But they don't feel like they're top 3 right now. They really don't. So I think they have to be down here, even though their rating is like here. That's how inconsistent this team is. This is the weirdest positioning I've ever put for a team. I have never put a team so far out from the overall compared to their like aspects of the game. But that's just how inconsistent they are right now. Man, this is weird. What is happening to them? I hope they lock in. Just play regular drafts. Like seriously, just go back to playing regular drafts that you're comfortable with. And then they'll be fine. Okay. Last team, everyone. Last team. Vamos! I do think that Vamos is one of the teams that has actually adjusted the best overall to the new update. They have become very acutely aware of where their strengths are and how they want to play for them. Right? Vamos started off the season with a loss to MV in a very one-sided fashion. But then once the patch dropped, they did actually still win against Homeboys as well. And then the patch dropped and they destroyed games like Kelantan. And they also won against Arrow. This was actually a fairly close match, this one. The Arrow versus Vamos game was fairly close and highly dependent on just individual snowballing. Vamos is second most aggressive early game team, right behind SRGOG. I think we have to say. Definitely. Second most consistently aggressive and consistently trying to make something happen on the map team, right behind SRGOG now. Their team fighting mid-game is also very good. But then their late game drops off. This is a team that straight up is aiming to close out games as early as possible. That is their main goal. Their main goal is to close out games as early as possible. I'd put them like... I'd actually put them this far up when it comes to team... Actually, no. Their team fighting is also a little messy sometimes. I wouldn't actually say their team fighting is that good. Hold on. What were the matches they played recently? It was Arrow and then it was Gizmai. We can't look at the Gizmai game because that just doesn't give me information. If we look at the Vamos versus Arrow game, which was the last game, actually, last match. Yeah, so it was very one-sided by either team in the first 2 games. And then in the last game, then Vamos was able to like find it. So I think that was also a little bit because of Arrow's draft. Vamos actually isn't doing too bad a job. I would say that Vamos overall is actually straight up not doing that bad. It's a little... The fact that they lost the game to Arrow when there's this big of a gap between them as well, though. Oh, people are going to look at this tier list and judge me. People are going to judge me for this power ranking, man. I am straight up going to be judged for this power ranking, I feel like. Okay, I think Vamos has a very solid late game, all things considered. I would put them here. Which means that they're actually rated fairly high. They're obviously behind CG. I'm still gonna put them behind CG. I would actually put them ahead of Homeboys. It's just how they measure up to Monster Vicious. They did lose to Monster Vicious in week 1, but it feels like it's a very different time already. Is Vamos my top 3? Is Vamos my 3rd place team right? That feels so weird. That feels so weird. But I think I might do it. I think that might be where I put them. Hala Vamos. Honestly, I respect Vamos for just like going all in on the villain persona. I genuinely respect Vamos for just deciding, F it, we're going to play the game the way we want to. We're going to like interact with people the way we want to. We're going to talk shit about people the way we want to. I respect that actually. Yes, live your truth. And it's reflected in their gameplay as well. You can see that the players look a lot more comfortable now that they don't have to, you know, hold back and be disciplined, you know. Just play what the fudge you want, you know. Obviously don't go too far, but it's working. It is working. Vamos is more consistent this week compared to the first week, 100%. Definitely. Oh my god. People are going to look at this ranking and judge me, man. This is the weirdest power ranking I've done. Like, in history. I feel like straight up, in the history of me doing power rankings for MPL, this is actually the weirdest one that I have ever done. Cause like the positionings translated into their overall ranking just don't make sense. Like, god damn. It's because all these teams are like so confused after week 2. It's probably because of the week 2 situation. I imagine and hope that by the time we do our week 4 power rankings, the teams will have figured out the meta a little bit more, and the power rankings won't look as weird. But I do think this is my power ranking for week 2. This is so weird. My god. Hey, Homeboys and Ray showed us they have good mechanics, MV not yet. I mean, that's why you put like Homeboys and Ray so much higher than MV in the late game. If we adjust based on that, the thing is, MV is like, in my opinion, a lot better than Homeboys and Ray in 2 categories. MV have yet to prove themselves, so you want me to put them here. Leonie, Ziki, Kaden, and Nova all don't really do a lot in the early game, right? These 4 teams tend to not really do a lot on the map in the first few minutes. That's the difficult thing. Sometimes it's dependent on the hero pickup, but from a consistent standpoint, these 4 teams tend to not do a lot on the map early on. I guess you could say Todak as well, but I can quite comfortably put Todak around here. That's why it's a bit hard to tell, like, who's stronger here. These 5 teams definitely make things happen on the map in the early game. These 4, not really. This should be fine. We should be fine. Let me resave. Re-screenshot it.